Mr. Deji has introduced me, my name is Abidemi Animashaun. I am the country HR advisor at Ecom Agro Industrial Corporations Limited here in Nigeria. And it's a great privilege to be part of today's session. Before I start, I would like to appreciate the team at Zero Consult. That's Mr. Adedeji, who is a visionary partner and also a colleague, and the rest of the team for putting this together and for the amazing work that they do in the field of HR management and development. And I would also like to earnestly thank all participants in today's session for creating time. I understand that we are in a busy world or in a busy environment, but for those of us who have created time, both near and far, to be part of today's session, I want to say that you all are appreciated. And like I promised, it's going to be straight to the point, and as much as possible, I'll try to cover all the key points within the time that I have. So without further ado, we'll be deep diving and also dissecting the themes of today's session, which is redefining leadership and then the skills that we need for the modern workplace. Next slide, please. So, yeah, we all are aware that the workplace in recent times have experienced some sort of evolution due to globalization, due to technological advancement, due to shift, in the economic landscape, and so the leadership in Nigeria also is not, the leadership portfolio in Nigeria as well as those outside Nigeria is also not left out of all these changes. I think a popular shift that comes to mind is the COVID-19, which have led to changes in the leadership landscape in recent time. One that comes to mind is when COVID-19 came, the need to have employees work remotely meant that leaders had to explore ways that they could connect to their teams virtually, remotely, without losing them and without losing them basically. And after the remote work era came the RTW, that's the return to work era. And leaders were also faced with, the challenge of having to convince staff, to return to work. We've heard of some top companies in the world who, at some point, needed to come up with policies that require workers to come, to return to the workplace. And it wasn't easy because that also created an headache for leaders, corporate leaders, because having people work remotely, and then now wanting them to return to the workplace is like a change, is like a shift, and that you have some workforce not being too convenient with, not being too convenient with, but leaders needed to look for ways to convince staff to return to work, such as mentioning the need for deep human connections and deep human interactions, better engagement when people meet physically. So all these are events that have taken place in recent times that have really challenged, leadership landscape both in Nigeria and outside Nigeria. So basically, today we'll be exploring ways that leaders can actually use in the modern workplace to stimulate their teams while also ensuring that business plans, business goals, business objectives are also achieved as well. Next slide, please. So before we deep dive into the skills that leaders need in the current workplace, I think it's also very important for us to talk about, where we are coming from and where we are now in terms of, leadership. Gone are those days where we used to have, let me use for instance now, gone are those days where, you have meetings being called by team leads and is an opportunity for the boss to show himself, is an opportunity for the boss to maybe blast or lambast someone, publicly. But in today's era, or in the current time, in the current age, we've seen that things like team meeting are moved from being highly structured to what I would say flexible meeting. We now have meetings where teams meet and they are not lengthy. It's not looking like a one-man show. The meetings are open, they are inclusive, ideas are welcome. There's engagement, there's high engagement. It's cross-functional and it's also not lengthy. It's usually straight to the point and without wasting people's time, because sometimes when you have too frequent and too lengthy meetings, people become bored and then they lose touch of the objective or the reason why, such meetings are called. So in recent times, you have daily huddles, where team leads meet with their team members to just briefly talk about, okay, how projects are progressing, what are the challenges encountered and, what are the ways to resolve and then move forward and all of that. We have project kickoff meetings, innovative meetings, and also closeout meetings as well. So they are more engaging. So there's a shift from that Oga at the top mentality to a more participatory leadership setting. And we're witnessing this in startups. Yeah, we're witnessing this in startups. Like Paystack and also like Flutter Wave as well. And then apart from that, the perception about employees also have shifted in the modern leadership landscape, such that employees are no longer viewed as liability or they are no longer viewed as cost centers. Employees are now viewed as assets. They are now viewed as asset that drives not just the survivability of the business, but also profitability and also sustainability. So that's why it's not very uncommon for us to hear certain roles like business partners, strategic corporate advisors, and the likes. Then modern leadership has also moved from taking decision based on gut feeling or based on intuition. Modern leadership is now particularly about, okay, why? Using data to make data-driven decisions, and yes, and trying to strive a balance between being business-oriented and also being people-oriented as well. Next slide, please. So we'll be looking at the key leadership skills for the current workplace. So skills that leaders in the current time, in the current age can use, to drive team productivity, to drive business results, to achieve organizational goals, and all of that. So we'll go to the first one, which is emotional intelligence. I want to believe that if not all the audience on this call, most audience on this call have heard, the word emotional intelligence, EQ, and basically it means, or it basically means how we are able to understand our own emotions and also understand the emotions of others, and also how to manage our own emotions and manage interactions or relationship with others as well. Then, when we're talking about emotional intelligence, basically we're referring to that balance between using the head and using the heart. I came across a post, I think day before yesterday. Someone mentioned that if you want to lead yourself, you use your head. If you want to lead others, you use your heart. Well, for me, I find that quote somewhat fundamentally flawed, because you can't. It's almost impossible to say that you will lead yourself using your head only without using your heart. And I cited example of self-compassion. Sometimes in our life we need that. We need self-compassion to move past certain issues, certain conflicts, certain challenges. Which is like the emotional side of things. And sometimes when it comes to dealing with others as well, we can't only say we want to rely on our heart alone, because, for instance, now, if I'm taking a decision because people like me, or because I want people to like me rather, it might be at the detriment of the business. So there's a need to balance between using the head, which I call logic, and also using the heart, which I call emotion. Then, when we talk about emotional intelligence, it has five components: self-awareness, being aware of our own emotion. Self-regulation means being able to control our emotion. Then, motivation is the ability. Um, Motivation is like the driving force, to want to understand other people as well as understand ourselves. And I'll be focusing more on empathy, because empathy is central when we talk about emotional intelligence. Then I also want to mention of the fact that empathy is different from sympathy. Sympathy is feeling sorry for someone, maybe because of a misfortune that they've experienced, without necessarily understanding what they are going through. But that's sympathy. But empathy is a little bit, it's different. Empathy is more like understanding what the other person is going through by putting yourself in their shoes, to know what they're going through. And when you know, or when we understand what the other person or the other people are going through, it helps us to come up with ways that we can better support them, you know, to move past whatever challenges or whatever crisis that they are going through. Empathy is one critical skills that in time past, currently, and even in the future will be relevant, because we can't eliminate, the emotional part when it comes to dealing with people, especially in this world that is vocal, that is volatile, that is uncertain, that is complex, that is ambiguous. It means that leaders need to be deliberate about understanding, listening actively and asking the right questions so that they can develop and implement, the right policies, the right processes, the right practices, the right strategies that impact the people that they lead as well as the business. A case in point is Access Bank. During the 2019 merger with Diamond Bank, under the leadership of the late Herbert Wigwe, um, if you study how the leadership response to that merger um, came about or went along, you discover that to a large extent, the leadership of Access Bank applied some sort of emotional intelligence. Why? Because in 2005, um, Herbert Wigwe experienced a merger which took place between Access Bank and also Marina and Capital Bank. And so Wike wasn't new to the fact that when you have such corporate restructuring happening, that employees might be agitated, because things like job security, some employees will feel like their job security is on the line. And so that experience in 2005, have helped to shape, how the response of the leadership, would be when the 2019 merger with Diamond Bank, finally occurred. And we could see the response of the leadership, in trying to address staff concern, letting them know that, look, even though there's a major corporate restructuring, you understand, we understand your concern, and we are able, we would, see as much as possible to do what we can to see that this restructuring or this change, doesn't have negative impact on you, so to speak. And then, in addition to that, someone posted that, to lead others and to lead yourself, that you have to understand the dynamics between where people are at emotionally and where they want to be emotionally is very, very critical, like I said. Next slide, please. Then, when it comes to digital fluency, someone will be asking, how is this a skill, that relates to leadership in the current workplace? Yes, it does, because we are in a data-driven era. We are in an era where technology, where automation, where AI, have come to stay. And so, as a leader, for a world that has become highly technologically driven, leaders cannot come up short. Leaders cannot come up short. that you are a traditionalist, that you are a silencer, that you are a baby boomer or a Gen X generation, is not or doesn't cut it anymore. It's not an excuse to say, oh, my generation during the time when I was born, we didn't have this advanced technology, and so I'm not caught up for all these things. As long as you are in today's world, that digital fluency, that digital literacy, that digital savviness, has to come to play. Imagine being a team lead and then your team members are discussing a latest technology or tool that helps productivity, and you don't even have an idea, or you don't even know of any other, tool that can help productivity. It's a bit off, let me say. And so, in today's world, acquiring those basic digital knowledge and those basic digital skills, following updates when it comes to technological innovation and reskilling are very, very essential, for leaders as well. A typical instance is InterSwitch, which was founded in 2002 and also, became a unicorn in 2019. I mean, the story behind that significant success that InterSwitch was able to achieve was because the management behind the InterSwitch was data driven, and most decisions they made were backed by their data. So for leaders who are digitally fluent, you understand, it helps them to make better decisions with data, and then it helps them to improve operational efficiencies while also enhancing communication and also collaboration. So, like I mentioned, imagine being a team lead and then, if your team members, mention or highlight tools that can be used to, improve communication and collaboration when, especially when it's in a maybe a remote setting, you understand, and they're not being able to contribute. It's a bit how I'm looking for the right word to use now, but it's somehow, you understand. So as leaders, we also need to see that we are digitally fluent with what is happening when it comes to technological advancement and innovation within the workspace, even outside the workspace where we operate. Then moving on to adaptability and also innovation. Next slide, please. Like Yemi Fashion puts it, he said adaptability. That's a combination of adaptability and agility. And so basically, we are in a faster changing world than ever before. Please, the next slide, I would like to quickly highlight the innovation circle, just so we understand what adaptability and innovation means. So basically, this is an innovation graph or chart put by Joseph Champetier in the early 1940s, basically talking about the innovation circle. And in summary, from what we'll see that the circle or the wave of innovation is getting shorter by the day. The first wave of innovation took place 60 years, lasted for 60 years rather. The first wave of innovation lasted for 60 years. But then we could see that the sixth wave of innovation, which is the era of automation, robotic, digitization, sustainability, lasted for just 25 years. Imagine we moved from 60 to 55 to 50 to 40 to 35 to 25, and now we are 25 years. So what it means is that what is relevant today, may not or may become obsolete tomorrow. Please, back to the innovation and adaptability slide. So what is relevant today? What is relevant today, may become obsolete tomorrow. And so that means as leaders, we need to ensure that at every point in time, our processes, our business models, our practices, as well as our people operations systems too, are adapting to the changes that are happening. No wonder top consumer packaged goods and fast moving consumer goods companies like Nestle and Unilever are pivoting to beauty and wellness products. They're making that shift away from food, um, food and consumable. They're making that shift to beauty and wellness product. Why? Because there's a shift in terms of consumer behavior, in terms of preferences, and in terms of purchasing power. Our very own Dangote as well is not left out as well when he delved into the petrochemical sector as well. So basically, as leaders, the need to be adaptable, the need to be innovative, is non-negotiable. Very, very important, because if you do not adapt or if you do not innovate, is is definitely going to be such that the world will leave you behind, and you don't want to be left behind. So as leaders, it is very important for us to be opened to new ideas, to be quick to making decisions, because you may be thinking of an idea may come up and you may not act on it, and someone else may also have that idea and then take um, how do I say, take over you, and then by the time you will realize it is looking like by the time you realize it is looking like um, maybe someone has stolen your idea, when actually nobody stole your idea. It's just you not being agile enough, to capitalize on that idea. Next slide, please. So another skill that comes to mind when it comes to the modern workplace is leaders to have what I call people-centric decision making. Now, what do I mean by this? Processes, practices, policies, etc. are driven by people. Would all agree with me? They are driven by people. When you put processes in place, they can't drive themselves. They need the human factor to drive them. So the first factors leaders must and should consider when making decisions are the people. Then other factors such as money, machineries, method, materials can follow you know. But then I also like to mention a caution that people-centric decision making should not also be such that it puts the business at risk, because it is unwise for you to, for instance, say, okay, you want to increase staff salary when you know that your business cannot sustain that. You understand? So there must be a balance between making decisions that are both people centric and also that are both business centric as well. For instance, let me give an instance of one that happened recently. A renewable energy firm during this year's International Women's Day implemented a one-day paid off per month to support the menstrual health of their female employee. I want to believe that the reason behind taking that, implementing or putting that benefit in place, so to speak, is because the leadership has realized that there's a need to be responsive to, the needs of employees, and then seeing ways that their needs can be met. And because when you have employees who are happy or who are satisfied, automatically it would affect or it will impact your business positively. So having that people-centric mindset or decision-making mindset is also one competency that leaders need to adapt or adopt in the modern workplace. Next slide, please. Then I reserve this for the last, ethical leadership. And the reason why I reserved it for the last is because it's like the foundation upon which all the other skills or competencies that I've mentioned, rest upon. Because if the foundation is weak or faulty, no matter how beautiful the building is, it's only a matter of time before it will collapse. Late Dr. Miles Monroe said something that people will only follow you genuinely and willingly if they trust you. So no matter how sound your strategy is, no matter how tight your plans are, if the trust factor is lacking, it won't take flight. And even if it takes flight, it's only a matter of time before it will come crashing down. So we must go to be ethical leaders as much as we are going to be strategic leaders as well. There was a question that I posed, some times ago, to test true character, between ethics and social acceptance. And then the question is, if you would do what or which would you do first? If you were to choose between doing what is right or what will make people like you, it's a question for us to take, back, while, after this session, for us to ask ourselves, okay, which would I choose first? If I were to choose between doing what is right or doing what will make people like me. So I leave us to that question, to ask, to answer, to ask ourselves, and then, to audit ourselves, to ask ourselves to come up with sincere, responses and all of that. And the case of MTN Nigeria's non-compliance file by NCC, I think in 2019 thereabout, when they were fined a huge sum for not disconnecting unregistered users, is one popular story that comes to mind, and that shows that ethical behavior is no longer a nice to have, but is a must have. It is non-negotiable. And I would say that when you're cooking corporate governance without the ingredients of ethics, it can be likened to cooking a soup without seasoning, to put it in that simple format. So when you're cooking corporate governance and you don't have the ingredient of ethics, you don't have the ingredient of morals, you don't have the ingredient of values, embedded in the corporate governance that you're cooking. It's like just cooking a soup, without seasoning. Automatically, what that means for the chefs in the house, we know what that means. That such soup or such food won't have taste, and all of that. So, please, the next slide. So we move to the challenges, facing leaders. There are a lot of challenges facing leaders, but for the sake of time, we'll just look at three, which is policy inconsistency. A case in point in Nigeria is the Naira for crude deal. At some point, we learned that the federal government mentioned that um, crude oil should be sold to local manufacturers, for naira. And then later on, we heard again that it's no longer for naira, that it's now for dollars. And again, we heard that okay, it's been reversed, and then the leadership, the federal government wants to make it permanent now that crude oil will be sold to local producers for naira. Such kind of sudden changes, have a way of impacting or affecting leadership and also decision making as well. So those are like the challenges, leaders in Nigeria. We're using Nigeria as an example. Leaders in Nigeria face. Then another one again is talent retention and brain drain. What comes to mind is the japa. And recently, I think I heard that there's now jackpada. That some people who japa are now, giant pada back to the country, and all of that. And then when it comes to talent retention, leaders are also faced with the issue of yes, trying as much as possible to retain talent, especially where you have Gen Zs, entering the workplace. This category of generation, they are highly dynamic, they are sophisticated, they're adventurous, and sometimes they can be unpredictable. So these are things that keep leaders. These are part of the things that keep leaders awake at night. Okay, how can I retain my top talent? How can I ensure that I have competent hands in the organization, driving sustainability, driving survivability, and all of that. Then another one again is work culture shift. Like I said when we started the session, that there used to be a demand for remote work, but then after the COVID-19 waned, there was a need for employees to return back to the workplace. And so leaders were faced with that challenge of moving workers from a remote work model to a return to work, model, which some yeah, which some employees basically were not too comfortable with. So it posed a challenge, to leaders as well, even apart from Nigeria, globally as well. So it's like a global challenge, faced by leaders, having to move workers from a particular work pattern to another work pattern. So sometimes, for instance, you could have employees who call to work from home, probably because maybe his wife is sick, due to pregnancy. And so leaders will need to come up with solutions or ways to handle that. So, of course, it's expected that we empathize with them, but then we can also advise them that, okay, they should apply for compassionate leave as well. Then when it comes to work-life balance as well, um, for me, uh, I've heard, having to work with different departments, different units, different sections. You would hear some department, telling you that, or complaining that they find it difficult to go on annual leave, maybe due to their work demands. And, of course, we share their concern, and we feel their pain as well. We understand their concern. And so sometimes, I, for one, can just, advise them that, look, I understand that you may not be able to take, maybe 25, maybe you have 25 working days. You may not be able to take 25 working days because um, your job demands, that you are present or you attend to some job related function. But how about taking your annual leave in piecemeal? Maybe that 25 days, you break it down into 3 or 4. You take 5 or 7 days first to recuperate, and maybe in the second quarter you take another 5 or 7, and before the end of the year you've exhausted all your 25, annual leave. And I see it on their face that, okay, you understand, because a 5 day rest or a 5 day break is better than a no day break at all. So at least that's progress, even though there's still room for improvement, but at least there's a shift, from the problem to the solution. So that's basically what I'm trying to emphasize here. So the next slide. Then strategies for building modern workplace leadership. For leaders as well, learning is continuous. And so we cannot say, oh, for instance, now, I believe that the audience or the participant on this call, because they want to upskill, because they want to improve how they lead people, they want to improve how they do things, is the reason why they've been, or they're on this call, or they've joined this session as well. So it's part of continuous learning and development that, leaders have to imbibe or inculcate, because, like I said, what you know now may become obsolete or may become irrelevant tomorrow. I'm not even talking of in the next 5 years, because we're in an ever-changing world. So that continuous learning and development is very, very important. And then also, leaders need to embrace mentorship and coaching. We cannot overemphasize this, because we cannot, the truth is, I'm sorry, but it's a bitter truth, we cannot live forever. There's a need for us to replicate ourselves. There's a need for us to leave legacies behind. And so what that means is that we will need to develop other people, who will take up the mantle of leadership when we are no longer, occupying the leadership seat as well. So it's very, very important as well. Then leveraging technology is also very key, because technology has, I was reading something on how technology has enabled the sustainable development goals. And it was amazing to see how technology has touched into every sector, including agriculture. Now we have a sector or a subsector in agriculture industry called agri-tech. So people are using technology to drive solutions such as addressing climate change, addressing supply chain, addressing logistics, addressing operations, even in the agricultural field. So leaders cannot but capitalize on the advantage of technologies, to survive in the modern workplace. Very, very important. Then another thing is Leaders need to ensure that they foster inclusivity and also collaboration. We're in an era where the workforce has become more exposed, they have become more learned, and so there is the demand for more. You know, due to that exposure, there's a demand for more. So leaders need to ensure that people are not left behind, people are brought together, and then people are included. The ideas of people, like they will say, um, no man is an island. You understand? So you need the ideas of people. Even though you have an idea, you need to sample the opinion of others to be able to validate that idea that you have, if it's really worth pushing forward, or if it needs to wait, or if it should even be put in the archive, till it is ready, or even if it's no longer needed and all of that. And there are some statistics that back up, inclusivity and collaboration, that companies that are inclusive make better decisions up to 87% of the time. I mean, that is a significant margin, you know, it's a significant margin, and it tells why, you know, leaders have to be inclusive, and why inclusivity is a nice, no, not, it's not a nice to have, it's a must have. Yes. Um, I think at this point, I would like to draw the curtain by concluding that the Nigerian workplace is evolving, and also leaders must evolve with it. Successful modern leaders combine emotional intelligence, digital skills, adaptability, and ethical decision making. Leadership is no longer about authority. I repeat, leadership is no longer about authority, but about inspiring and creating an enabling environment for things, for people, for ventures, for communities to achieve significant, great results. Thank you very much. If there are any questions and answer, please, I'll be glad to take them.
All right, thank you so much, Mr. Bidemi, for that presentation. Thank you so
You're
much, and
welcome.
I have like
I
a
hope
lot of.
I didn't take much time.
Yes, I think it's the pace was great.
Thank you.
So please, if you have a question, please share questions. Please share in the comment section. We are Mr. Bidemi is pretty much here to answer and attend to all the questions. So let me check the right. So we have a question here. So let me just uh, says, how can leaders adapt to new challenges while staying true to their core leadership values? That's one question in the comment section. Uh, Mr. Bidemi, you can go ahead and take the question while we wait for other people to also drop their questions in the comment section.
Okay. Thank you very much for that question. Yeah. So, in response to the question about how leaders can adapt to new challenges while staying true to their core leadership value, I would say that um, values are on one side, adapting is on another side. Now, I would explain. Values are basically what we um, consider important, that drive our decision making. And I will use an example. I'll use examples of some top companies who have been able to navigate changes without, you know, changing, without changing their values, without changing their core values. One that comes to mind is Johnson and Johnson. Yes, for them, for them, quality was very, very important. Quality was very important. But then, at some point, they needed to pivot to other businesses. But however, they realized that even though they are pivoting to other businesses, they need to ensure quality in terms of delivering product and services must and should not change. You understand? And so that core value, of quality was something that even while they were pivoting, they still kept true to it and ensure that, in what they do, in terms of operations, in terms of practices, in terms of processes, in terms of products, in terms of services, that excellence is is excellence is upheld, quality is upheld. So as long as you stay true to your value, as long as you stay true to your core behavior, even while there are changes around you, there is a way your core behaviors, your core values, would survive, would be embedded, would find its way, into your processes and into your operations, even into the final product. You understand? So, regardless of the changes, regardless of the innovation, the advancement, you understand, our core values, would always have a way of fitting into those changes, because those are like the behavioral creeds. Those are like the dominions that define how we are able to withstand pressure. How we're able to withstand. So take for instance now, if I own a business, and then one of my core value is um, integrity. Let me just use the integrity for example now. So if my core value is integrity, and there's a change in terms of legislation, you understand, it may necessarily not affect my core value of integrity. It it may test my core value of integrity, it may test it, you know but then the thing there is, because I am true to that, you understand, I would always find a way to navigate that change, without compromising my core value. I don't know if that answers your question.
All right. Thank you so much, Mr. Bidemi. I believe Yewande can hear you, and she's going to drop in the comment section if that answers. Although we have another question from Yewande. It says that in a world driven by technology, how can leaders ensure that they stay connected to their teams? That's another question from her.
Okay, so in a world driven by technology, how can leaders ensure that they stay connected with their team? I think the first thing that comes to mind is, apart from, I don't want to even start by mentioning technological tools that leaders can use, maybe such as WhatsApp, such as Slack, such as Google Team. The major thing that comes to mind is being people oriented, being people conscious. You may have all the tools, but if the mindset is not there, if the mindset is lacking, if the people oriented mindset is lacking, the tools will do little or nothing. You understand? But the advice there is, when leaders are people oriented, when people leaders are people minded, when they take time to check in, when they realize that, oh, when they don't check in on their team members, they may start feeling disengaged. You understand? That mindset, that consciousness, that people consciousness is very, very important. Then we can now start talking about the tools that they can use, to engage, to keep in touch or to check in with their team from time to time. But the major factor or the major thing there is the mindset, the people oriented mindset. I can tell you that there are times when I think that there are times that I think, you know, a significant hour of my day is spent on people. Not just because, maybe because I am an HR professional and because my job demands that, but apart from, outside work, a significant part of my time is spent, I'm always thinking, okay, if I'm not thinking about employees, I'm thinking about family members. If I'm not thinking about family members, I'm thinking about colleagues, I'm thinking about partners. to the extent that I forget to even think about me, So if one is, I'm not saying you should forget about yourself, totally. There's need to create time for yourself as well. But what I'm saying is, when the mindset or when the mind has been conditioned to think about people, outside ourselves, you understand? Then using those tools would not really be an issue, because these days you can learn how to use anything from YouTube, you understand? But I think the consciousness, that mindset is very, very fundamental when it comes to keeping in touch with things, especially for leaders who have team members that, are in remote or at remote locations. Thank you very much.
Thank you so much. Thanks so much for that. So Yewande responded that thank you so much. Yes,
You're
sir.
welcome.
So we have Mr. Ransom joining us from Ibadan as well. Thank you so much for joining. Uh, yes. So please, if you have further questions, please you can join. You can drop it in the comment section. Uh, I think while we wait for others to drop their questions and comments, uh, we will need to move ahead a bit because of time. Uh, right. So it's at this point that we are saying that thank you so much, everyone. And uh, before we um, before we draw the curtain totally, all right, this has been an amazing section. I've learned a whole lot of things, ranging from how I can adapt, how leaders should adapt to the current landscape in terms of technology, in terms of human relations, in terms of even their emotional intelligence as well, because now it's no longer you, it's now you and others as well take a very important place in you understanding them so that you can have better interaction with them. I really appreciate that point, and it's very spot on. I've been to distinguish between empathy and sympathy. That stood out for me so well. Thank you so much for taking us through all this very vital and interesting uh, aspects of leadership that uh, we have to master at this very critical moment, where we have to deal with. And I believe for senior managers, this is very vital because now you have to deal with
Absolutely.
cross generational employee,
Yeah.
which is very, very important. So thank you so much for that. And I want to inform everyone uh, that joined, that also will be joining, that the slide for today's section will be available and the recorded version will be available for us to watch again. And the link to watch the section again and the slide as well will be shared to every registered participant uh, in their email. So please look forward to that. Mr. Ransom also says, thank you so much, sir. Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you for joining. Thank you.
You're
So
welcome. Thank
that
you.
will be shared with everyone